on the Universities of Transformations During and Beyond COVID-19, which is moderated by Martha Berkel, a very nice colleague or very dear colleague of mine in the University of the Future Network. So, starting with that,
Vamos a comenzar
we
entonces
will be
y
here 2 hours. You're very welcome to
como
post.
ustedes saben, vamos a estar reunidos durante 2 horas.
Oh,
Lamento, pero no estoy escuchando el audio original.
I
Yeah, they're telling us that there is no sound in YouTube.
Nos están indicando que no hay sonido en
a short
YouTube.
disruption. I heard me
Les pido
twice.
disculpas por esta interrupción. Por algún motivo me escuché
Now,
2 veces repetir
Marta
lo mismo.
Nucilia,
Pero bueno, María
as
Nucilia, ahora
secretaria de Asuntos
la
Académicos
secretaria de
of the
Asuntos
Universidad de Buenos
Académicos de la
Aires,
Universidad
I may
de
give you
Buenos
the floor
Aires,
at the
le voy a
moment.
ceder la palabra en este momento.
Bueno, buenos días
Good
a
morning
todos y todas. Les
to
damos la
everyone
bienvenida
present
a
here. I
este
would
segundo
like
día
to
del
welcome you
quinto
to this
encuentro anual de
second
la
day
Red de
of the 5th
Universidad del
annual meeting of
Futuro,
the University of the Future
organizado
Network,
por
organized
el CITEP, que
by
depende de la
CITEP,
Secretaría de
which
Asuntos
depends on
Académicos de la
the
Universidad
Secretariat
de
of
Buenos
Academic
Aires.
Affairs of the
Para
University
la
of
UBA
Buenos
es un
Aires.
honor
For UBA,
que nos
it
hayan
is an
elegido
honor to
como
have
sede
been
de este encuentro
selected
que se
as
propone
the
abordar las
place to
transformaciones
hold
de la
this
universidad y
meeting, which
reflexionar
focuses on
sobre las
transformation of
prácticas
higher
que se
education and
desenvolvieron
reflect
en
upon
este
the
escenario
different
y que pueden
practices that have
proyectarse
taken
hacia el
place within this
futuro.
scenario and that could
El 3
be
de
considered
marzo
for the future.
se detectó el primer
On March
caso de
3rd, we
coronavirus en
detected the
Argentina.
first case of
Desde
coronavirus in
entonces se
Argentina.
registraron una
After
serie de
that, we've
sucesos
had a
inéditos que
series of
impactaron
unprecedented
profundamente en
events
el
with a
orden de la
deep
sociedad civil en
impact
general
in the
y del
civil
sistema
society in general
universitario en
and in the
particular.
university
En
as
el
a whole.
marco del
Within
aislamiento
the
social
framework
preventivo
of
y
the
obligatorio
preventive, social, and mandatory
decretado por el gobierno
lockdown
nacional el 19 de
implemented
marzo,
by
las
decree
universidades
on March
argentinas
19th,
desarrollaron
Argentine
distintas políticas
universities
en el
resorted to
marco de su
different
autonomía
policies
para
within the
sostener la
framework of their
continuidad pedagógica.
autonomy to maintain
Las
pedagogical
iniciativas de la
continuity.
Universidad de Buenos
The
Aires
initiatives
para
of the
dar
University of
respuesta a
Buenos
este
Aires to
escenario
address
crítico
this
estuvieron
critical
atravesadas por
scenario
su gran
were
dimensión.
affected
En la
by
universidad
the
estudian
major
alrededor de
dimension of the
315.000
problem.
alumnos de
We have
grado,
about
distribuidos en
315,000
13
students
facultades y
distributed
en más
throughout
de 100
13
carreras.
schools
En
and
cuanto
more
a los
than
cargos docentes
100
y no
programs
docentes,
and
las cifras
majors.
rondan
The positions
31.500 y
encompass about
13.500 respectivamente.
31,000
Porque la Universidad de
professors and
Buenos Aires
educators and
aparte tiene
13
6 hospitales que
non-teaching
dependen de
staff.
él. Es
We also
una
have 6
macro
hospitals that
universidad.
depend on the
En
university. So
síntesis,
this
la
is
UBA
a
se
macro
caracteriza por ser una
university.
universidad pública y
UBA
masiva
is a public,
y que a su
open
vez se
university
destaca por
and
su
is
oferta
also
académica
distinguished
de calidad.
by its high quality
Quisiera
academic
compartir
offering.
brevemente con
I would
ustedes las
like to
políticas
briefly
desarrolladas
share
en el
with
área
you the
académica
policies that were
para
developed
responder a
at
este
an academic
desafío
level
de
to
asegurar la
address the
continuidad del
challenge of
proceso de
ensuring
enseñanza y
the
de
process
aprendizaje.
of
Sin embargo,
teaching and
no me
learning.
voy a referir a este tema,
However,
pero
I
cabe
will not
destacar que la
refer
UBA
in
también
detail to
realizó
this topic,
un
but
gran aporte a las
UBA is
políticas
worthwhile mentioning
sanitarias del
that
país
UBA made a
y se
big
involucró
contribution
con
to
la
the
misma
health policies
rapidez
developed by the
que en
country and
acciones de
became
extensión y
involved very
transferencia
quickly in
universitaria para
actions
atender
of
a los
the
problemas
transfer
derivados de la
of
emergencia
knowledge
sanitaria.
to deal with the health crisis. With the continuity of the health crisis and in the face of the need to deal with an institutional response, our higher council created an advisory commission integrated by all the authorities of the different academic units, which developed a contingency program for digital teaching and learning during COVID-19. We began our academic year in the midst of the pandemic. So we intended to systemize communication and technological and pedagogical actions in the face of the situation. UBA had to implement different lines of action in a very short period of time, and we were not prepared to give continuity to the activities. Within this context, we saw the diversity and the unique characteristics of each academic unit. As a result, the transition towards a remote emergency teaching platform was diverse, depending on each discipline and depending on the previous experience of each school with distance education and the training of the teachers in the use of ICTs. As part of this strategy, both from the units and also from the point of view of academic affairs of the university, we considered proposals for all professors and teachers. During the process, it became essential to document accumulated experience in long distance education, pointing out the essential role of the Center for Innovation and Pedagogical Development called CTEP, which was created as originally to work for teachers and students of the university and face the challenges of the new technologies and their inclusion in higher education. The proposals for professors were developed with a view to redesigning learning and teaching in this extraordinary context, also dealing with didactic and mediated learning processes and issues regarding the use of technological tools and environments for teaching. In order to do this, we carried out proposals for massive education that were open for all teachers. And as we included the specificities of each discipline, we also included the training of professors also of different levels because we have 6 high schools that depend on the university. We also extended networks inside the different chairs and in the different teams of each academic unit and one with the other through ties that could boost these practices throughout the university. It was necessary and essential to rethink the evaluation of the different learning processes for students and the specificities of this process in each discipline. We proposed a series of recommendations aimed at uh, professors and authorities to think about different modalities that would ensure quality in training the future professionals of the university. A second group of challenges had to do with the community of students. On the one hand, we had to support the students to help them overcome the obstacles of going from a person to person setting to a virtual distance setting. And this is a university that mostly focuses on face to face lessons. Also, the digital divide and the gaps in access also constitute a challenge for the whole of the educational system in Argentina. And in this regard, agreements with cell phone companies to allow more access were a measure to mitigate this persistent problem that also affects, to a lesser degree, the whole group of teachers. A third group of actions was the digitalization of administrative processes, which include the processing of diplomas and degrees fully virtually, and also electronic records, electronic files for the different case files of the students. Finally, we will be concluding our year with the release of the fourth call for proposals and call for projects with funds that are determined, are called Subatic. And the purpose is to strengthen innovative proposals of the different chairs to foster a full inclusion of digital technologies and strengthen networking as well as interdisciplinary work and a shared construction of knowledge. To conclude, I would like to point out the fact that in the face of this uncertain and unprecedented scenario, the university has once again reaffirmed its commitment to education and has also achieved the materialization of an institutional policy to provide continuity to academic and educational activities. During this period, we expedited innovation actions from a pedagogical and institutional perspective related to educational institutions. This proves essential right now. At the end of the academic year, it is essential to systematize and include them into other practices. The key contribution is that they will allow, in our opinion, to improve educational quality and increase the level of access, permanence, and also conclusion of educational programs. We renew our commitment as an institution to guarantee higher education as a public good and a social right, which requires the agreement of different policies among the governments, higher education institutions, and society as a whole, with a view to democratizing education and maintain its sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Will return in different phases of their life to university or come back to universities, not only after their first school and first entrance to university. We already see globally public funding financial constraints at the universities. We see different forms like student mobility, already in virtual formats now, not at least because also of the developments we have currently. And of course, there are also the issue of international research grants. So what we established was a network of reflection and action. On the one hand, it's really bringing in global perspectives on universities and universities of the future. What unifies us is multidisciplinary backgrounds. So we have very different perspectives on higher education and on universities. We have, on the one hand, the analysis of research, but also we do research and we have policy analysis. And very important for us is also the linking with industry on the one hand side, so the world of work, and industry, and on the other hand, PhD students. So the coming scholars, if you like, or like, yeah. What we were created, or we created our network for joining forces globally. On the one hand, to respond to social needs when designing curricula, and I think this is a very important inclusion. I think, Marty, you will maybe come back on those issues also later. To offer a space of interaction to PhD students and to faculty, and to provide them with a more global perspective with our different views, and to connect with industry and to respond to research and development needs like startups. What do we do? Well, the first thing is we have our annual meetings in different countries at different places. This year online, but still at the University of Buenos Aires. We have open thematic seminars that we dedicate to different topics. We have PhD seminars with students from our universities who deal with topics that are important for the University of the Future. We edit journal special issues on the University of the Future, on didactical things, on curricula development, but also on other issues connected with the University of the Future. We participate in European projects, so and the idea is to do that also more globally. So with that, I need to say we are still quite Eurocentric, I may say. We are currently very involved in a UNESCO project. The UNESCO has recently started a university or a future education project. And for that, we shared our views and made a small study, which we want to have on a bigger scale in the coming month. We developed a COVID-19 manifesto, also our answer to the way of how universities can deal with the developments during COVID-19. And very currently, and I look now at my colleague Martha, we have a call for chapters open on our book that's dealing with, still open. So maybe this to give you a short overview. I don't want to take more time, but if you want to have a look, join us, have a look at our website, and you're very welcome to come to us and to write us and to join us at any time. Thank you very much. So I leave it here. Okay. So this now for a first round and for a short introduction. And now I may say I'm very happy that we have, well, a great guest and a great person for the keynote today. So I may introduce at this point Dr. Martha Cleveland Ines, professor and program director at Athabasca University in Alberta in Canada. Martha studied sociology of education at the University of Calgary. And already there, what I was reading, developed a strong view on high quality education. So in short, I would say the perspective is that education must be accessible, affordable, and of high quality for everyone and everywhere. Martha, and I think this is very interesting, is on the one hand very involved in the community of inquiry framework, and very much, well, her focus is online and blended learning. And I would say, I don't know the English word now but you're a Koryphäe in German for online learning and blended learning. You published, researched a lot on distance education, blended learning, and online education. You had numerous research projects on that, and you supported hundreds of graduate students working in this area of education. You served, and I think this is interesting because we discussed this quite a lot also within our network. You were facilitator on an advisory group on MOOCs, and I think this is still a topic and even becomes more a topic. The one says they are dead, the other says they get a new flourishing. Well, but you were guest professor at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden, and still are adjunct professor there. You hold a lot of workshops, lectures on collaborative online learning, on flexible learning, and you also have connections to the Beijing University in China, as I was reading. And at the moment, you hold a major research grant through the Canadian Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. And I think this is something also very special, the development of professional identity through online learning communities. So with that, Matti, I may welcome you very, very much, and we're very much looking forward to your keynote. I may give you the floor. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Eva. Now, can I make sure that you can hear me okay? Yes, you can hear me? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eva, and a special thank you to Martha and Joseph for the opportunity to contribute to this meeting of transformation of higher education. It's very important that we have these discussions. So the gravity and breadth of our topic today is awe-striking. According to Pinheiro from Norway and colleagues from South Africa, Brazil, and Finland, many changes have led to the shift in the nature of the traditional relationship between higher education and society. That social pact that we have has been challenged, and it currently, in the recent past, saw significant changes, and through those changes in education, technology, economies, and society, that social pact between education and society is being rewritten. That's what we want to focus on today. Many changes were underway prior to the recent outbreak of COVID-19 that led to a global pandemic and a widespread but too quick reshaping of education delivery. So before we look at that emergency transition, let's take a snapshot look at what was happening. In the view of the general population, there are significant weaknesses in our current system of higher education. First of all, it's too expensive. I mean, in some places, it's absurdly too expensive. In the US, for example, there can be a significant debt from students anywhere in the world where tuition is being charged. You can end up with significant debt. Now that violates, I think, that Article 26 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which was originally crafted in the 1940s. And this Article 26 is a more recent addition. Everyone has the right to an education. So higher education must be equally accessible. The kind of cost model that currently exists delimits access. Secondly, the connection between university degrees and job security has blurred. In addition, universities have not or are not able to keep pace with social trends and technology. Most innovation is taking place off campus, and it takes a long time for schools to realize these trends and integrate it into the curriculum. Finally, economic insecurity has created increasing pressure on universities to tighten the link between education and work training, while skills of intellectual and civic development go unnoticed and are undervalued. Higher education institutions everywhere are and have been under immense pressure to change in ways that will make them a better fit for the needs of the societies in which they exist. Among other things, this new fit will provide competent graduates what they need to live and work in a world much different than what the original structures of higher education sought to support. Salim Bedad of Rhodes University, South Africa, reminds us of Derendorf's view. I love this quote. Derendorf says, stagnant universities are expensive and ineffectual monuments to a status quo which is more likely to be a status quo ante. Yesterday's world preserved in aspic. So, significant pressure to transform higher education have been driving change for decades and were increasing in momentum when the pandemic hit. Let's talk about higher education in the recent past, higher education in the present as it copes with COVID-19, and then what the best possible higher education environment might look like as we move into a post-COVID world. Now, I only have 30 minutes, so I must globetrot through these things, but I hope that what I have to say will spark further discussion. The need for higher education change or reform rests most solidly on this. The social, economic, and technological structures around education have changed significantly, but higher education has only changed a small amount. Now, according to Pond, neither the purpose, the methods, nor the population for whom education is intended today bear any resemblance to those on which formal education is historically based. The rise of the knowledge-based economy and transfer of knowledge assets means that higher education institutions no longer have a premium on knowledge claims, although the quality of emerging knowledge claims outside the institution is allowed to vary in ways that we inside the institution are not happy with. You know about fake news and fake information. The potential reach of technology, in addition, seems limitless and has and will continue to change distance in higher education institutions, according to Ikenberry, in the way we organize ourselves, our policies, our culture, what faculty do, the way we work, and those we serve. External pressures abound and show themselves in many ways. Demographics, shifts in the economy and the nature of work, social mobility, economic development, innovation, and democratization. Governments play on both sides, trying to get command of social and economic issues and the education system. The education system, in parallel, must work on two sides We must respond to these societal recontextualizations while we're also trying to shape that society for the greater good through the development of our graduates, who will then influence those societies. It's very important. Let's look at a few examples of higher education reform in the recent past. So as early as the mid-1990s, strategic planning had become a common activity at higher education institutions. Even earlier, Coulter and Murphy outlined the transfer of market-driven strategic planning processes to nonprofit and public government-funded institutions like universities. So Dr. Donna Findlay, graduate of the London School of Economics, brought this idea of strategic planning to the University of Calgary in the mid-1990s. Among other things, a curriculum redesign team was constructed. The goal of this team was to respond to the undergraduate degree program characteristics and learning outcomes, delivery processes, and repurpose them. We were to ensure that every degree program adapted new characteristics. For 2 years, we played catch with student ideas and faculty insights everywhere across the campus. And finally, the General Faculties Council approved the following 6 required components beyond subject matter learning outcomes as part of every single degree program on campus. At this time in the U of C's history, there were 110 programs. What the General Faculties Council approved was this, that in every program there would be an explicit syllabi so that students knew what their program goals were and what the course requirements were. There would be broad and extended faculty-student interaction, an interdisciplinary component, integration of research. There must be experiential learning and an international component. For Dr. Findlay, this was a great success. These degree components were embedded pedagogical processes that were meant to lead to the following graduate student profile. The graduates of the University of Calgary would be noted for their ability to pose questions that approach the frontiers of knowledge, solve the social and intellectual ethical problems they may face, relate theory to practice, establish and realize goals, working alone and with others, communicate meaning in effective ways, and engage meaningfully with those from cultural and linguistic communities different from their own, and understand the world from a variety of perspectives. So, higher education, sorry, just 1 second here. So at about this same time, James Duderstadt was the president of the University of Michigan. He retired as president emeritus in 1996 and then spent a decade traveling around the world to visit other universities and help them look at how they may change. In 2009, he wrote a book titled The University of the 21st Century. In this book, he identifies the distinct but related elements as drivers for change in higher education. He goes on to document his practice of higher education reform and development, arguing for a new 21st century university through, in his view, strategic planning and change management. In 2010, Xiaodong from China identified these processes as worth learning if your goal is to build a world-class university. Strategic planning allows us to attend to these drivers for change, which Duderstadt identified, in reference to each other, rather than just one at a time, using a systems approach that ensures attention to the impact change in one area will have on other areas. Note the scope. These particular drivers for change hit on every aspect of our higher education institutions. I, in particular, are interested in the three along the bottom, of course: technology, quality of instruction, student demographics, and expectations. So in 2012, I became a guest professor at KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden. They're known as Sweden's MIT. Their Vision 2027 saw that the road to the goal of being one of Europe's leading technical universities goes through individualized learning and innovative learning environments. These statements on the slide here support this vision, and they touch on some of the things that Duderstadt identified as necessary areas where we had to pay attention to the required changes. One of the transformations that they created to realize the goals in their vision was to create an innovative new school, the School of Education and Communication in Engineering. It was divided into segments where education developers would work with faculty and the library and the language learning units to promote, support, and communicate emerging pedagogies and technologies for education. I saw this as a very exciting innovation and spoke of it many times while working with leaders at other higher education institutions. So there are many examples where strategic planning has led to success, and somewhere it has not. According to Treckenberg and his colleagues, when they wrote "Presidencies Derailed: Why University Leaders Fail and How to Prevent It," they said strategic planning may not be the right approach for universities. They suggest a tactical approach instead. Well, a tactical approach is how Canada's Open University developed. We can consider Athabasca University as one open university, a particular way of mapping university education to the needs of society. The overlay that we have is much different than traditional universities. Founded in 1970, Athabasca University is a public, board-governed, open and distance education university operating as a comprehensive academic and research institution under the authority of the Alberta Post-Secondary Learning Act, which serves students throughout Alberta, across Canada, and around the world. So we are an open university. What do these 59 open universities around the globe have to say about the university of the future? Well, with a focus on process, Athabasca University seeks to remove barriers to undergraduate and graduate education. We offer flexible enrollment opportunities for learners, regardless of age, gender, culture, income, disability, career and family obligations, geographic location, or education background. Supporting remote technologically enabled learning, Athabasca University provides flexibility for young adult and lifelong learners who cannot cannot or choose not to undertake in-person higher education. We also support many learners engaged in-person or residential programs at other institutions. In fact, 60% of our 55,000 enrollees per year are visiting students. The university offers learners the opportunity to interact with students across Canada and around the world through established and emerging programs. We seek to meet the needs of career professionals and scholars to develop evidence-based practice and research expertise, and create knowledge that fosters a global outlook among its graduates. Athabasca University provides high-quality, interactive learning environments that include a variety of online and other media technologies for individualized and cohort learning. Course designs and technological applications are based on current research in open and distance education, pedagogical advances in lifelong learning, and contemporary developments in online learning technologies. So let's go back to Duderstadt for just a moment. Athabasca University maps to at least, and I know my president would tell me there are other things going on, but I can say that Athabasca University maps to at least 6 of Duderstadt's identified areas where the demand for change is very strong. Now, Duderstadt hasn't covered all important areas of required change either, and we are constantly working at Athabasca to recreate ourselves in order to map uniquely to the needs of our stakeholders, both the society around us and the students we serve. That dynamism is something that keeps me at Athabasca University. Now, let's go back to the reform initiatives that I mentioned earlier. The curriculum redesign effort that was so expensive. Millions of dollars were spent at the University of Calgary to create this process. It took 2 years to do the design and get approval. There were dozens of us working in a change room to get that done. And then we finished that program with some programs adopting some of the framework. Why did that happen? Well, the senior leadership changed and the process was lost in new plans with new priorities. The leadership at KTH changed recently as well, and the innovative School of Engineering, Communication, and Education was closed. The new rector is an outstanding leader. This is her picture. And she's well apprised of higher education issues for contemporary society. As we work together in our University of the Future network, strategically and tactically, we need to create a vision of the University of the Future that will identify sustainability for change. This churn between projects and their failures must change. So let's talk about COVID. What happened at Athabasca University as to students and learners when the pandemic broke? Well, we had 2 advantages. We were already connected to students via the internet, and we were a partially distributed workforce. Faculty and tutors were working from home, but even at that, our in-person exams had to be redesigned, and our program administrators had to turn off their work phones and go home. Getting word out to our students and confirmation from them that they knew what was going on was just chaos. Luckily, Our base rests on open, flexible, person-centered pedagogy and the treatment of students. We came together as a community in spite of the challenges. Within a few months, all was adjusted. We've seen significant growth, in fact, in applications and enrollments, in some areas as high as 19%. We are considering and preparing for post-COVID adjustments in our education delivery and program administration. We had a unique vantage point at Athabasca University, and I'm sure those of you from University of Buenos Aires had the same experience. We had a vantage point to observe the higher education response because colleagues and friends we hadn't met yet approached us via all types of communication to ask for advice, information, and direction. Staff, faculty, and executives at AU were interviewed by local, national, and international media, newspapers, radio, and television, where we shared a snapshot of our 50 years of experience working remotely with students. We provided key messages as we were able to. There were 5 of them. Stay in regular contact with your students. Keep students in touch with each other. Create digital material where possible. Use other communication tools and material distributions where the internet isn't available. And finally, rethink assessment strategies during university closures. So Maclean's Magazine interviewed George Valencianos. I think you're here today, George. And we tried to say what we felt, what would and wouldn't work. So the requests were so many, and it was taking up so much time, we opted to create a website called Moving Education Online. We welcomed all who contacted us as fellow colleagues. There were faculty, lecturers, teachers, administrators, instructors, and instructional designers in higher education and beyond. Resources on this site are offered to support moving to alternative forms of education delivery in the emergent move to remote or distance delivery. All resources have been curated, verified by experts in the field of technology-enabled learning as valuable resources for the current situation and beyond. These resources provide guidance in any situation where distance, online, and/or digital education delivery is needed or desired. Particularly interesting was and is working with those in remote rural areas where the internet is not accessible, or perhaps if it is accessible, it's not reliable. So we returned to Taylor's list about the 5 generations of distance education, the history, if you will, complete with delivery activities over time that were used before the internet to offer great ideas for creative instructional design solutions when working with students at a distance without access to ICTs. So some of these people working with limited ICTs are from the Commonwealth developing world. Athabasca University and the Commonwealth of Learning have been offering MOOCs for the last 4 years. With support from executive administration of both institutions, we were able to triple our schedule of offer to ensure as much access as possible. These MOOCs are scaled community of inquiry MOOCs with the opportunity to discuss the education of now and the education of the future. Leadership discussion is also common. We can have as many as 53 countries represented, and each MOOC supports thousands of participants. We offer one called Technology-Enabled Learning, and another called Blended Learning Practice. We had to study what was happening. So we offered a symposium to bring scholars and graduate students together to consider the impact of this pandemic on all facets of society. The presentations focused on the pandemic's foregrounding of social, political, and economic inequality with respect to marginalized communities, including the poor, Indigenous peoples, racialized peoples, immigrants, refugees, women, the homeless, victims of domestic abuse, people with disabilities, and LGBTQ plus people. These people were affected by COVID in inequitable ways, unfair ways, and their access to education is equally inequitable. So the symposium helped us begin to consider this, what happened and what might happen next. So beyond the symposium, we also want to consider how COVID-19 pushed higher education reform movement forward. If we assume that blended, toggled, and online learning will remain a more significant part of university education post-COVID, what do we need to do? How well did the education emergency response to COVID address Duderstadt's list of issuing required changes? Let's skip that slide. Well, we can't discuss it all today, of course. So I picked 3 areas where I think attention is warranted in our University of the Future. Just 3 of many things, but worthy of discussion. So let's look at technology for a moment. Where were most colleges and universities with technology implementation and digitization prior to COVID? Although this transformation can have more impact than just on the teaching and learning engagement, the pandemic has definitely pushed institutions to wrap up their pedagogical and technological infrastructure. But as I said earlier, as soon as you change something in one area, things change in a lot of other areas. What does that mean for faculty roles, for student roles? The longer the pandemic lasts, the more likely the infrastructure will develop and solidify. According to Ivy Wise, hybrid options that blended online lectures and smaller in-person discussions can help reshape overall the higher education model. It is likely that this type of blended approach will continue for the foreseeable future, particularly as colleges invest in upgrading their technological infrastructure and move the more impersonal, crowded lecture courses to online delivery. So how well did universities do in the pivot to online? Well, the CON framework is one of the most complete and comprehensive theoretical e-learning models. Looking at CON's dimensions of needed infrastructure, they are pedagogical, technological, requiring interface design, evaluation, management, resource support, ethics, and institutional attention. It is likely that many institutions wishing to continue online and blended learning will be building on existing infrastructure for some time. So staying with the technology for another moment, my colleague, Dr. Muhammad Ali, did a presentation for us a couple of weeks ago on the 4th Industrial Revolution. We had a good debate on whether that's actually happening, but we do feel we're experiencing a revolution of some kind. And he spoke about the technology that's going to continue to drive that revolution as we work to adjust higher education to be a better map to society. He said, we're going to have a lot of robots. We're going to have drones and tons of metadata. We have blockchain, virtual and augmented reality, artificial intelligence and machine learning, systems collaboration, and learning analytics, we must make choices about how much we will automate education, where the human side of being through an education process fits into these technological applications, and where we will limit the application of emerging technologies to education, and where we will embrace it. Okay, quality of instruction. This has been on the table for higher education institutions for a very, very long time. Let's talk about universal design for a moment. This quote comes from Brian Alexander. If you haven't looked at his work, as he's a university futurist, I would recommend that you do.
Marty, I'm sorry, Marty, we have only 2 minutes, please. You can start to conclude, please.
Universal design for learning now adds a pandemic dimension. Design learning experiences, so they account for pandemic stresses. So this is a deep charge. Public health may become one more element of universal design for learning. In order to handle this, we need to look at capacity building. And the United Nations Development Program defined capacity as the ability to get things done. And at the World Summit in 2005, they identified that there must be national strategies for ICTs in education worldwide. So they also talked about the instructional design capacity gap, and this needs to be addressed. We cannot rest it on the shoulders of faculty. The expanding role of teaching for faculty in higher education is problematic. They won't be able to do it all. It is unrealistic to assume that faculty can also be experts in the technology, the pedagogy, and the design, such that the role for instructional designers will help. Here, you can have my slides at the end of this session. Here are the 21st century capabilities that we must attend to as we look at the quality of instruction outside the subject matter learning outcomes. We must be able to do these things. This is where the University of Calgary started all those years ago. So in conclusion, I will say congratulations to this group for their UNESCO policy brief. If you haven't read it, I strongly urge you to do so. They say the changes that have been highlighted through COVID-19 are highlighted that the promising future of learning and the accelerated changes in modes of delivery to deliver quality education cannot be separated from the imperative of leaving no one behind. Education is a human right. I also wanted to mention here that the work of Hans Schutz and Maria Slowey, who have been having higher education reform workshops for decades, is worthy of your attention. Last, I will say, this at Athabasca is our new Imagine plan. This took years of work from everyone around the campus. It was spearheaded by our own Dr. Neil Facina, who is now transitioning away from Athabasca and moving to be the president of Okanagan College. So again, we will work at Athabasca to make this a sustainable plan. It is both strategic and tactical. If you want to know more about it, you can look at the Athabasca University website to hear more about this plan for us going forward. We will work to maintain it, even though our fearless leader is now moving on to help another institution. So my views of the day, I thank you for your attention and your time.
Thank you so much. Marty, thank you so much. Very, very interesting your presentation, and thank you for sharing us all your knowledge and expertise. We are going to give now 5 minutes. There are no questions in the forum, but we can always, can always come back with questions to us. We're going to have now a recess of 5 minutes before the panel. The panel is supposed to start now, but we're going to have 5 minutes to do the transition between the keynote and the panel. Thank you so much, Marty, again for your presentation. And thank you,
You're
everybody,
welcome.
for being here. Thank you for the technical support and everybody. Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for being here as part of the University of the Future 2 days event. Today we have the second event. In the morning we had a Marty Cleveland keynote, and right now we are going to have a very interesting panel on the topic, the transformation of universities in the framework of COVID. And it is my pleasure to introduce the two panelists. We have here Irina Volungen from Lithuania, and we have George, George from Belestianos from Royal Roads University in Canada. So I'm going to read a little bit about you both. First of all, I'm going to introduce Dr. Irina. She works at Lithuania Vitatus Magnus University, and she's the former president of EDEN, the European Distance Education Network. She's also director of Innovation Studies Institute and associate professor in education, doing some research and leadership in global grant research for education and education methodologies. On the other hand, we have George Veletsianos. George Veletsianos, he is a Canada Chair, Research Chair, Innovative Studies and Learning Technology from the University of Royal Roads. George studies emerging technologies and pedagogies, and his research aims to understand learners, educators, and scholars' practices and experiences in emerging online settings. He has published 2 books, more than 40 peer-reviewed manuscripts and book chapters, and has given more than 60 talks in conferences and events worldwide. So thank you so much again to both of you. And if you would like to start something with a big premise or a big statement with regard to where are we now with regard to COVID, before we go to the questions, please, that will be appreciated. So perhaps, Irina, you would like to start, please?
Thank you very much, Marta. I'm so happy that our network, University of the Future Network, together with our colleagues from Latin American countries, have this event today to reflect and to discuss where we are now. And actually, we're facing a very special year when all initiatives that have been addressed since decades in education, including technology-enhanced learning and teaching, distance and e-learning, open education, open educational resources, open educational practices, and many more, have now been addressed with a completely new context, and drove all these innovations forward very, very quickly. So I think this is the point where we need to start our discussion to reflect on how we see them now, urgently needed at a very urgent time in all universities on the global scale. So I'm very happy that not only countries, but continents meet here now to discuss and to start real professional collaboration and networking in an open way. So this is my short introductory pledge.
Thank you, Irina. If George, do you have an opening statement, please, to share?
Thank you, Martha, for the invitation. Thank you, colleagues, for being here, for taking time to spend with us to reflect upon some of these issues. that we're going to be talking about, ranging from online learning to the transformation of the institution, to learning wherever it might happen, at students' homes, in coffee shops, in places where we never thought it was possible. I'm glad to be spending time with you thinking about the future. I spent a lot of time reflecting on the future and what possible futures we might face. But I think these conversations are really important because they help us think about what futures we want. Because the future is not there for us to reach. The future is there for us to be designed and developed, and in collaboration with people like you. It's how we develop better futures, both for ourselves and for our students and for institutions and our societies. So I look forward to our conversation, and I look forward to what this hour together brings for us.
Thank you so much, George. Thank you. So my first question for both of you is, in your experience, what are the main challenges universities are facing in the framework of COVID-19, of this pandemic, with regard to instructional design, participation of students or engagement, with regard to administration, leadership, finances? So if you can please share with us your opinions on this. I'm going to start with Irina, please.
Yes, exactly. You already started, Martha, with the challenges. So the first, maybe associate to higher education, is the new mode of learning and teaching. So learning design and curriculum, which was the traditional term for many years in higher education, suddenly was disrupted. And we can imagine a situation when a teacher, regular teacher from higher education institution, is invited to revisit curriculum or learning design in one course. If a teacher has more than one course, it's a number of courses. I think all of us experienced moments when we addressed teachers in traditional face-to-face universities, conventional universities as they are called over the globe, and we're introducing practices of open universities who contributed to the development of conventional universities for many years, for decades. And we identified huge differences in meeting these challenges among teachers from universities that had curriculum in audiences, lectures, face-to-face, sometimes blended learning. Spring moment came immediately, and all teachers and all students were moving online. They used technologies the way they used their learning and teaching methods only to convey the messages, the instruction that was still their common modalities. And suddenly, when autumn was approaching, everyone was expecting that the peak was getting down, and maybe we all will get back to our regular practices and regular reality. Unfortunately, learning design needed to be changed, not only for autumn, not only for spring, but for the new reality. So the new modality of learning and teaching, the new modality of learning design, assessment, that already goes hand in hand and step by step with the recognition of learning results and learning outcomes by the stakeholders. All this is now merged into one. So we have really great confusion. We have still many challenges, and we still need a common talk. For those who have been working in the area of open and distance learning for decades, we already identify some common vocabularies. There are so many newcomers and so many learners among all of us, teachers, students, society members, higher education institutions, that I think we still stand at the line when we need to find our common language and common understanding. Other challenges: mobility is changed, project modes changed, collaboration changed, and we are all challenged. We are challenged with our balance between professional and personal life workload. So I think we have many, many challenges that we still face today and start talking about them. Marta, do you want me to continue, or maybe
No, thank you. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Just 2-3 minutes is perfect. George, what do you think about the same question, please?
Thank you, Martha, and thank you, Irina, for those wonderful statements. I think they capture the landscape very well. And I guess on my end, I should start by saying that Railroads University is a blended mode institution, meaning that about 90% of our courses and offerings are online. And in many of our programs, students come to campus for about 2 weeks before the start of their program. So they have a short residency, and then they transition to being online. So that is the predominant mode of our teaching and learning model. And that's essentially the mode that the pandemic found us in. So given that sort of background, what I've been seeing in my observations at my institution, in the research that I've been doing into faculty and student experiences at this point in time, is that the landscape is sort of uneven, and the challenges that some universities are facing are different than the challenges that others are facing. I think there are challenges that we're all facing, things like the ongoing uncertainty of the pandemic. For example, in March, we didn't know much about the virus. Lots of you and lots of us were in lockdown. Now we see new lockdowns in Europe, but the environment is shifting, and this uncertainty is a big challenge for institutions planning ahead, right? Planning for the fall, and we didn't know if we're going to be able to go back to physical spaces, planning for the summer, and so on. Amongst this is a big challenge that Irina mentioned, is stress and anxiety, both by faculty, staff, faculty at centers for teaching and learning that now have to support many more individuals, student anxiety and stress, students finding themselves in sort of new environments that at times are not amenable to them studying, meeting student needs. Institutions that were online might have been more prepared to meet student needs, but they might not have been prepared to meet them at the scale that the pandemic brought. On the other end, there are challenges that some universities face, but not all of them do. So for instance, declines in enrollments. Whereas a lot of institutions are facing this, there are other institutions that have not faced declines in enrollments. In fact, their enrollments have increased, or may have seen increases in enrollments in particular areas of the institution, but not in all areas of the institution. In Canada, for example, this is particularly true for institutions that rely on international students who are now not able to travel to our campuses. And this reliance on international students varies by different parts of the country. So some institutions have had many orders of magnitude of decline in their enrollments, while others who are relying on domestic students didn't have as much of a decline. But I think the greatest challenge in this environment is sort of overcoming the thinking that we are somehow going to return back to normal. I don't think that's that's a possibility. I think the landscape has shifted. A lot of things have shifted, and hoping that we'll go back to, say, February is problematic, not only because of the uncertainty that's involved, but because of all the things that have now changed, ranging from the faculty knowledge and skills about teaching online to sort of declines in the economy and so on, that have, in my opinion, changed the landscape of higher ed, which is why the conversation around what should the future look like makes me excited. So I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, George. I would like to add two big challenges that have not been mentioned so far, I think, which are basically, I have been working as a consultant now for some time, for the last 3 months, in universities in Canada and in the US. And what instructors are facing is a totally disengaged student. So student engagement, which is one of the main challenges that this pandemic has brought. Students find it very difficult to go online and see a talking head because, again, the instructional design hasn't changed, because there are no constructivist methods that are brought into the discussion. So still the instructor is lecturing, or the faculty member is lecturing online in a Zoom or in a Blue Jean session, very far away from engaging students in this conversation and in this participation. And the other big challenge that I see is that we are demanding from faculty to be ready to teach online when they are, George was just saying, all the stress that provokes. So we are expecting faculty are ready to teach online when teaching online is totally different than teaching face-to-face. With regard, starting with preparing the program in advance to be ready to have your management skills for the class management, to be ready to use other constructivist approaches to the learner, to be, all of those things that we are expecting our faculty to have, and they don't. They are, some of them will be already connected and ready to teach online, but most of them not. But the good news, I think, and there has always been has to be a good news, is that finally, in my opinion, COVID has brought the agenda of online learning to the top of the priorities in education. So I can imagine George, Irina, myself, the future University Network members, we have been waiting for universities to respond to this online possibility, where finally is here. Finally, this possibility is here, and we should take advantage of that, and we should be happy for that, I think. Anyways, I'm going to move to my second question. Thank you again to both of you. My second question is, what do you think is the future of education looks like after COVID? How, what do we see in the panorama? How are universities going to look like after COVID has ended, when it ends? Or are we going to have a blended approach? And I'm going to start this time with George, please, 2 or 3 minutes, if we can start with you, please.
Sure, thank you, Martha. So I don't have my crystal ball today, but I think this is a great question to sort of reflect on what we want the university to look like in the future. But overall, I think the pandemic has accelerated trends that we were seeing before the pandemic. Trends such as, for example, in Canada, reliance on international students and concerns around that, or the increasing adoption of online and blended learning. Those trends were there prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic's arrival has sort of accelerated, I guess is the best word for this, accelerated their adoption. So when I think through what the future should look like, as opposed to what may look like, I am thinking about greater focus on student-centered design, greater trust of our students, and designs that allow them the flexibility to participate in ways that fit with their lives. Especially adult students, students who work, students who take care of their family, students who live in remote communities. So sort of this greater sensitivity about the realities that our students are facing, that more and more students are facing, and that more and more individuals may be facing as they are entering into a new environment where employment may be uncertain, where the uncertainty of the pandemic causes shifts like lockdowns and so on, where the sort of distribution of vaccines is unequal, where borders are sort of open but sort of closed. So I think in that kind of a future flexibility on the part of the institution, but also in the design that of each individual course is important. And when I think of flexibility, I think of things like flexible entrance requirements, flexible admissions, flexible assignments where students have options to select what kind of assignments they might produce, flexible attendance requirements in that some individuals may be able to attend physically, but some may be able to attend online and so on. I guess at the center of all of this is a greater focus on instructional and learning design, adoption of digital learning, sort of at a broad scale, but also a consideration of what skills and tools and credentials our students might need in this changing environment. It might not necessarily be a full degree. It might be some other credential. And there's a lot of conversation around micro-credentials these days, and a lot of investment by governments on this topic. So I think that's an area worth paying attention to. So I'll pause there and turn it back to you, Martha.
Thank you. Irina, please.
So I'm full-heartedly take what George said, and in addition, I want to mention maybe three aspects. One, I think this leads to maturity. If we can compare, we had some visions for lifelong learning. We also had the visions when students are able to select the best suited and customized approaches for their learning through in-service training, company training, and how higher education should collaborate with industries. I think now this is a reality. There will be offers available that students and us, lifelong learners, we are also students in this sense. We will have matured higher education with the offers of online programs adapted and suited best for us. The second thing, I am confident that we did research, and we had a recent publication, also the book published, that described how higher education will be suitable for digital and network society members. And I'm confident that this will happen. We will not have ownership of students any longer. I think, well, Europe, my continent, it invests correctly in digital infrastructure of Europass, of micro-credentializations. And I think with these investments, we will have the possibilities for free movement among higher education institutions globally. So that we all have common preparations. And our learning environments in the digital spaces will be matched with our digital personal profiles. And if we want, and if we agree with the proposals maybe by artificial intelligence systems, we will be able to follow offers from a variety of employers, higher education institutions for our career guidance and other things. And the third, I think that 10 years ago when we started virtual mobility, still we had very, very few offers for on global scale for virtual mobility of teachers and students in higher education. So I believe that this move was very rapid reason and push back to prepare these offers. And I do believe that in spring 2021, we will have much more possibilities for staff, student exchange in a variety of modes, including virtual mobility for short and long periods of visits. So this is my vision, and I really believe this will happen.
Thank you so much, Irene. George, I think I can hear in your responses lots of challenges, but also optimism. And from my point of view, and I'm trying to link our thoughts of today from yesterday main session, the keynote speaker yesterday, Frances Pedro from UNESCO, who was saying, what are the main challenges that we have for the future? How is the future going to see when we have a large number of students unable to attend school because they don't have connectivity, when the gap between developed countries or industrialized countries and the development world is going huge and growing even more now in the pandemic? And so what are going to be the huge index between who is going to have education and who is going to be left behind? And I think that I hope the future of education doesn't look elitist. Those who have money, those who have connectivity, those who have proper internet connections will be there, will be attending our schools, and those who have not will be left behind. And yesterday, Frances Pedro was also mentioning how women in particular have been affected in the development world because they need to go back to their homes, they need to take care of the children, and even industrialized countries, the huge role that mothers are playing, combining, helping their children with homework, going to work, attending university, being a mother, all those different roles. So this is also a big, big challenge that unfortunately, this pandemic is posing to all of us. But on a good perspective, I would like to add that I hope the future of university is more flexible. Learning is a flexible entity. And with that, I would like to mean that we are tired, and I will use the word sick and tired, of having a medieval framework of education where credentials are given only after you follow the procedures of the university, where credentials are only given or taken by learning in a classroom environment, sitting in a desk, being spoon-fed by the instructor about this is what you need to learn. Learning has to become a flexible entity where you can bring knowledge to the boss, where you can bring knowledge to informal places, where knowledge is more in the hands of the learner more than in the institution, responsibility only. And also this pandemic, I hope, gives us a very good chance to incorporate the needs and expectations of industry. This is something that we haven't mentioned so far. And as you may know, of course, industry has already been waiting for centuries for the university to provide the correct graduates. And because the graduates need a large time of retraining when they finally arrive to industry, then your industry is providing their own online learning environments, their own curriculum, their own mini universities. So again, how are we going to be flexible as traditional, difficult to change, as Irina was mentioning, institutions? How are we going to change to provide flexible and mobile learning opportunities responding to industry needs? And I hope we can see those kind of discussions in the near future. I'm going to move to the third question, but before that, I would like to share with the panel the fact that we have more than 100 participants in YouTube. So thank you so much to all of those of you who are following in YouTube. And please, if you have any questions, please send them in the chat. We are going to try to spend some time answering questions after the panel is over. Thank you again. So my third question and last question will be, for both of you, what do you think are the recommendations do you have for faculty, for staff, for university management with regard to, keeping quality of the curriculum, keeping quality of education in a more flexible environment after COVID? What do you think? And I'm going to start with Irina this time, please.
So as we already seem to be achieving a lot that we missed in recent decades, I think it's the right time. And we need to take this moment and to find agreements that we need to realize some visions that we had but failed and that were very good ideas. For example, we targeted at joint programs, at a joint curriculum, at open curriculum, open degrees. Also, we were talking about strategies focused on a variety of factors affecting our communities, global and local communities. And we're thinking how to realize that. So my recommendation would be for each higher education institution, so for the level of governance and management, but only together with the community, to rediscuss the focus and the strategy in the light of digitalization and online learning and possibilities that are provided on the institutional level, but also on the program level, and how institutions are going to meet the challenges that we just mentioned to all of us together. For example, how we can collaborate globally on the global network, meeting the challenges and solving them on infrastructure level, on the program level, how we can support teaching and learning units that provide support for our teachers and students, how we can ensure that the support is sufficient. And I think that the key word would be to develop trust-based relationships. And this allows us really to do this in an open events, in a collaborative events, to identify the communities that we find most common language with and start collaboration. And the key words and the key recommendation on my side would be to realize it through open professional collaboration on all levels. So that would be my proposal, invitation. And I think this is the strength and humanity, human approach that we can start with.
Thank you, Irina. George, if you can please share with us your thoughts on this.
Sure. I'm just going to be following up on what Irina was saying because collaboration was also sort of my keyword here. And collaboration spans many levels. It spans the level of institutional collaboration, so the kinds of things that Marty was talking about in her keynote, where institutions and colleagues reach out and invite those of us who have experience and expertise in, say, online learning and say, hey, how have you been doing this? Could you help us figure it out? Sort of extending, a helping hand. A common saying here is that we're all in this together. So helping one another, I think, is imperative. And that extends not just from one institution to another, but from one colleague to another. That collaboration can also exist within the course level. So collaboration between faculty and students. I think students are our partners in this environment that we're in. They've always been our partners. And even though we frequently say it, we don't often act on it. So working with students to sort of overcome these challenges, I think, is imperative. And sometimes when we talk about quality, we sort of come up with these principles or these ideas of what a quality course or experience is about that often pushes students to the side. So for example, a quality learning experience doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to have their assignments in on Sunday of next week. When half of my students, work on Saturday, or, some of their parents are facing health issues and so on. So I think we have to really embrace and flexibility and be flexible in this environment and moving forward in such a way that we might have to rethink what quality means. So some other recommendations that I listed here in preparation for this were sort of a focus on supporting one another. So faculty supporting students, students supporting faculty, which I've seen many times, administrators supporting faculty, faculty supporting administrators. We were all sort of going through a difficult time, and recognizing that, acknowledging it, and sort of allowing ourselves to be more, I guess, humane in our approaches might carry us through. And what I'm hoping will happen is that humanity, that care for one another carries forward in whatever future we find ourselves in. So I'll pause there, and I'll look forward to next questions, maybe from the audience as well.
Yes, thank you so much, George. Yes, thank you for for the points that you brought. Very, very interesting with regard to humanity, with regard to connectivity with each other, with regard to building networks. And I would like to add only one idea that hasn't been mentioned. I think this is a time to be bold. This is a time to experiment, to propose new ideas. I have been working with the School of Engineering in York University, and they have just started a Center for Educational Innovation. And because they are engineers, they were asking me, Martha, is this a time to experiment? Yes, yes, try to break again the framework of conservadorism, or the rigid frameworks of education, and try to offer new possibilities for the students, experiment with them new opportunities, bring them to the discussion. Anyways, be bold, it will be my question. So I have started to receive some questions from YouTube, and I'm going to move to the questions, please, for George and for Irina. We have a question from somebody called Ronsaja, and this question is for you, Irina. You have 1 minute to respond. The question is, why can't or cannot a PhD be online in times of the pandemic? I think this is something in relation to something that you mentioned before.
In my life, I've seen not one PhD happening online, and it was very difficult to argue again to classic academia and researchers that this is possible. There are many arguments usually. Humans are very creative to create obstacles and to stay in the comfort zones in the academias that they know. We do research online. We go for open research, for open data. We still are learning how to do it, but we have no doubt that it is not only possible, it's a must. And I think it is already happening. We have many experiences in that in Eden European Distance and E-Learning Network and other organizations. So I invite you cordially to go with this idea forward.
George, do you have something to add to this discussion? Can we study a PhD online? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a reason why a doctorate is different than any other advanced degree. Our doctoral degrees are online with a short residency. Athabasca's are completely online in Canada. The Open University of Catalonia in Europe has online PhDs. Many institutions across the world do. It's an interesting question, I think, because we often think about the modality as a barrier, but doing a PhD is sometimes often a very solitary work when you're face to face. Like you're at a face-to-face institution doing your PhD, say in emerging technologies, in education, and you might be the only person studying that topic. And then the way to find other PhD students studying a similar topic is by going online. So it's, I think we need to get past the idea of modality and really think about how, what might be the ways to support people studying a topic, regardless of the location that they're in. Like many of us who do our research beyond the PhD do it in virtual settings, which is very similar to doing your PhD research.
Yes, thank you so much, George. And yes, thank you. We have only 3 more minutes, according to Eva, who is kindly letting us know about that. So can we have like a 30 seconds of each of you with regard to a closing statement before we close the session? We don't have any more questions from YouTube, but again, participants in YouTube, you can always send us questions even if the session is over, and go back and review the video of the session. So please, closing statements from Irina and from George, 30 seconds or so, please.
I invite everyone to breathe in and out deep, to have no restrictions, to invite anyone whom you see, whom you want to invite for collaboration, for advice. And I would like to agree, Martha, finally with you. Let's be bold and start everything from the beginning if we have to.
Thank you, Irina. George?
Thank you. I guess my departing thought would be that I hope what we shared today was helpful. But at the same time, I want to encourage everyone to think about their own local context as well. You know, what's worked in my context might not work in your context. You might have different problems that you're facing than the problems that we're facing here. So I want to highlight that, you know, sometimes the local solutions can be much better than sort of these, you know, global solutions or solutions brought from other places. But that's where collaboration becomes so important and helpful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, George. Yes, think local. Think about how to help your faculty, your colleagues in a local way, without forgetting we are a globalized world, but thinking about local. I'm going to pass the microphone to Eva, but before I do that, I just want to thank everybody for their participation. I am Martha Burkle. I am the co-founder of the Future University Network with Dr. Joseph from Open University Catalonia. We are really happy to have you all here. It was really a very good discussion. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, George. And now to Eva, please.
Thank you very much, Martha. So, well, the final words with a deep breath in and out. Thank you, Irina, for that. Well, I think we managed to deal with COVID in a very, I would say, very forward-looking way. If I can just do a short recap from seeing the example of the University of Buenos Aires, a look at the University of Athabasca in Canada with a practitioner and a researcher perspective. I think this was also very interesting, and actually going beyond and not only looking on the challenges, but also on the future of higher education, beyond COVID. And I think there where we are heading to, I want to say thank you to Irina and George again, and Martha, to you, all the colleagues who were involved in this second day of our annual meeting. So I may invite everybody again to go to our website, the UFN network. We had it there. I'm not sure if it's there now, but please come back to us. Looking forward to meet you again. Thank you from, well, Buenos Aires online, I have to say, at this stage. And have a good day, or coming from Europe, have a good evening. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for all the 100 participants in YouTube. This was fantastic. Thank you. Take care. Keep in touch. Go to the website. And thank you very much again to Irina and George. Really appreciate your discussion. I think it was a very good panel. Thank you so much. And thank you also to the technicians. Muchas gracias al equipo técnico, a Silvia, por ayudarnos en todo esto.
Thank you to the technicians, Silvia, Andres, your team. Thank you all very much for your support, for your technical support.